Hello students, this is Miss Fatma, teacher of class 2 from the Smart School Sir Syed Ahmed Khan campuses and Gulistan Johar campus. Students, in this video we are going to discuss one of the chapter which is taken from your social studies book, that is water. This is chapter water. We are going to discuss chapter water. In this chapter we will be discussing about how does the water, where does the water come from, and what are the different sources and uses of water. So let's begin, students. Students, as you all know that water is very essential for our life, and we have already discussed that we cannot survive without water for more than 3 days. Students, we cannot live without water for more than 3 days. So this is how, by this you can understand that it is very very essential for our life. So students, now we are going to learn that where does the water come from. All the water that is available to us, that is used by us for various purposes, where does all that water come from? Where does all the water in the rivers, seas, oceans come from? So students, for that we are going to learn the water cycle. By learning the water cycle, we will be able to know that where does that water come from. So let's have a look at the water cycle. This is the picture of water cycle. There are basically three processes that are included in water cycle. The first one is evaporation, the second is condensation, and the third one is precipitation. And these processes repeats themselves again and again, so that's why we call it a water cycle. So students, first of all, we are going to discuss the first process, that is evaporation. And what happens in evaporation? So students, what exactly happens in evaporation? All the water that is present in the rivers, lakes, oceans, seas, all that water gets heated up due to the heat of the sun. What happens to that water? That water gets heated up in the due to the heat of the sun. Have a look at this picture. You can see that the water in the rivers, seas, oceans, lakes, all the water gets heated up due to the heat of the sun, and due to the heat of that sun, that water changes into vapors or into steam, which are called water vapors. That water is turned into vapors, which are called water vapors, and then those water vapors rises up in the air. Those water vapors rises up in the air. That process is called evaporation. Students, this process is called evaporation. Have a look at this process once again. You can see that the water is rising up. The water vapors are rising up from the rivers, seas and oceans. They are rising up in the air, and this process is called evaporation. Now we are going to discuss another process that occurs after evaporation, which is called condensation. This process is called condensation. So let's have a look what happens in condensation. So students, after the water vapors rises up in the air, what happens to them? Those water vapors starts cooling down. Those water vapors starts cooling down and forms tiny water droplets. So students, when those water vapors rises up high in the air, they starts cooling down due to the low temperature above the sky, and they turns into water droplets once again. They turn back to water droplets. Before they were vapors, and then due to the cooling of the due to cooling down, they turns back into water droplets, and those water droplets come together to form clouds. So that means clouds are formed by the water droplets that rises up in the air. Okay students, the water droplets combine together and they form clouds, and this process is called condensation. This process is called condensation. Now students, we have discussed evaporation and also condensation, which involves the formation of clouds. Now we are going to discuss the third process, which is precipitation. That it is called precipitation. So let's have a look what happens in the process of precipitation. Have a look here students at this picture. You can see that the clouds are turning dark. And why is it happening so? When the clouds start getting heavy and cannot hold the water droplets anymore, they fall back to the earth in the form of rain, hail, or snow. So now, students, once the clouds are formed and when they become so heavy due to the water droplets, they cannot hold any more water droplets in them. What happens? They fall back to the ground in the form of rain, hail, or snow. That means those water droplets come back to the ground in the form of rain or in the form of snow due to the due to because the clouds are becoming heavy and they cannot hold any more water droplets. That's why that water droplets falls back to the ground, and this process is called precipitation, which involves the rainfall, the snowfall. All this process is called precipitation. It is called precipitation. And students, after the precipitation occurs, that means after we have rainfall or snowfall, that water again gets collected in the rivers, in the seas, in the oceans, in the lakes. All that water which falls down from the sky, from the clouds, that water is again collected in the rivers, lakes, oceans, seas. So students, again this involves the collection. So this was the water cycle. And once the water is collected again, the water cycle repeats itself, and all the processes of the water cycle repeats again. So this is that's why we call it a water cycle, because all these processes are in cycle and occurs repeatedly. Again, after the collection, evaporation will occur, which involves the turning of water into the water vapors, and then it rises up. And after the water vapors rises up, they cools down and turn back into water droplets and form the clouds, which is called condensation. And after formation of the clouds, when the clouds become too heavy due to the water vapors, they falls back to the ground in the form of rainfall, snowfall, or hail. So that will be called precipitation. So students, this is how the water comes to us, and from there we get water. Now students, all that water that falls down to the ground, we have already discussed that all that water is collected in the rivers, lakes, oceans, seas. So that these can be considered as the natural sources of water. The natural sources of water includes rivers, glaciers, spring or waterfall, lake. All these are the natural sources of water, and that water is then available to us. But there are few man-made sources as well, which we build, like dams, wells. We build that to store water in them whenever the rainfall occurs, so that we can use that water, and from there the water comes to our homes through the pipes, through the taps. It comes in our houses through the water taps. Now students, you all have seen that there are various uses of water. You all know that there are various uses of water in our daily life, and many of our work includes water. Many of our work is done with the help of water. So let's have a look at few uses of water. We all use water for drinking, cooking food, extinguishing fire. Whenever the fire breaks out, we use water to stop the fire. We also use water for bathing, for washing clothes, and we also use water for gardening or watering the plants. So students, water is very essential for us, and we use it for many purposes in our daily life. So students, you all see, so now you all know that water is very essential for us, and if there are many uses of water in our daily lives. So that's why we all must also save water, and we all must take care of it, so that we don't run out of it, so that we don't run short of it. So there are various ways by which we can save water. We should never leave the tap turned on. Okay students, whenever we are not using water, we should never leave the tap turn on. We should always turn off the tap whenever we are not using the water. We should always turn off the tap. And we should and whenever we see that whenever we see that any pipe is leaking or any pipe is broken, we should repair it so that the water doesn't get wasted. Or we can also use buckets instead of we can also use buckets for taking shower rather than using the shower. So students, we should always repair the leaking pipes so that the water doesn't get wasted. And we should wash our hands. While washing our hands, we should use the water carefully and we should never waste it. Then we should also turn off the tap while brushing our teeth. Whenever we are brushing our teeth, we should turn off the tap and so that it doesn't get wasted unnecessarily. And we should only pour only as much water that is needed for us. Whenever we are drinking water, we should pour only as much water that is needed. Okay, we should not pour extra water, otherwise we will have to throw it away and it will get wasted. So these are several ways by which we can save water. So students, we all must save water as it is the basic essential, it is the essential need of our life and we cannot live without water, and there is a limited supply of fresh water on earth. So we should not waste it, otherwise we will run short of it one time, we will run short of it one day, and then how will we survive, how will we drink water, how will we fulfill our essential needs, how will we fulfill our needs. So students, we all must save water as much as we can. So students, I hope you all have understood today's lesson very well. Do revise this at your home and take care of yourself students. Thank you.